Nestled in the arid deserts of southern Iraq, just west of the Euphrates River, lies Tel Abu Sharain, a series of unassuming earthen mounds that mask one of the greatest archaeological revelations in human history. This is the site of Eridu, a name that, until relatively recently, lived mostly in ancient myth. Today it is recognized by scholars and archaeologists alike as the oldest known city in the world, the very cradle of urban civilization. The story of Eridu's discovery begins in 1854, when a British diplomat and archaeologist named John George Taylor was sent by the British consulate in Baghdad to investigate several mysterious man-made mounds formed from millennia of human habitation. Taylor, who worked for the East India Company and served as vice-consul in Basra, was hoping for a major breakthrough. He wanted to find statues, monumental inscriptions, maybe even palaces or temples. Instead, what he initially uncovered appeared to be little more than fragmented architecture. Stone platforms, bits of a drainage system, scattered walls and columns decorated with mosaic cones. His most exciting find at the time was a black granite statue of a lion, lying half buried on the surface. Even with this artifact, Taylor was underwhelmed. He wrote that the trip had not produced any very important results, and doubted whether he should even bother transcribing his notes. Yet what Taylor could not have known was that these unimpressive mounds were the remnants of Eridu, a city of immense significance that predated not just other Mesopotamian cities, but the very concept of cities themselves. Eridu's significance is rooted not only in archaeology but also in mythology. According to the Sumerian king list, an ancient manuscript written in cuneiform that chronicles rulers of Sumer and their cities, Eridu was the first city where kingship was bestowed upon humans. It states, "After the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu." This places Eridu at the very beginning of recorded human history, both in terms of divine myth and political reality. The king list goes on to name Eridu as one of the 5 cities that existed before the legendary Great Flood. While scholars debate whether this flood was a real event, a regional disaster, or a mythologized memory, Eridu's mention in such texts emphasizes its importance to the ancient Sumerians. Decades passed before Eridu was again the focus of archaeological attention. Following World War I, a handful of archaeologists surveyed the site, including Reginald Campbell Thompson in 1918 and Harry R. H. Hall in 1919. But it wasn't until 1946 that large-scale excavations were initiated. This time, the work was led by Fuad Safar of the newly independent Iraqi Department of Antiquities, alongside British archaeologist Seton Lloyd. Safar and Lloyd concentrated their efforts on Mound 1, an 82-foot-high tell spanning nearly 2,000 feet in each direction. Beneath the sun-baked surface, they found an unfinished ziggurat built during the UR3 dynasty, around the 21st century BCE. As they dug deeper, they began to uncover layer upon layer of even older temples, homes, and infrastructure. The deeper they dug, the further back in time they went. They uncovered strata from the Uruk period, 4500 to 3200 BCE, and below that the Ubaid period, 5300 to 3800 BCE, where Eridu's story truly begins. It was in this earliest layer that the foundations of the Temple of Enki were found, constructed from mud brick and constantly rebuilt over the centuries. Central to Eridu's development was the temple complex dedicated to Enki, the god of fresh water, wisdom, crafts, and creation. Enki, known later as Ea in Babylonian tradition, was one of the chief deities in the Sumerian pantheon. His temple, Iabzu, or House of the Deep Waters, symbolized the freshwater abyss believed to be the source of all life. Archaeologists discovered 18 successive temples built on the same sacred site, each new structure raised directly atop the remains of the previous one. This practice of reconstruction reveals a religious continuity and reverence that span more than 2 millennia. As the buildings were torn down, rebuilt, and expanded over generations, they created an artificial platform that lifted the temple ever higher above the landscape. Italian historian Mario Liverani notes that these iterations were not merely copies but were progressively more complex, reflecting the evolving capabilities of the civilization. Early homes and shrines gave way to monumental architecture. With each generation, the temple grew more intricate and grand, embodying both spiritual devotion and technical innovation. What did daily life in Eridu look like? Though much of the residential architecture has eroded over the millennia, surviving artifacts provide important clues. Pottery shards, tools, figurines, and ritual items have been uncovered, giving us a glimpse into how people lived, worked, and worshipped. The economy was based on fishing, agriculture, and trade. The presence of bitumen suggests that people in Eridu waterproofed their boats, which were likely used to navigate the nearby marshes and rivers. Trade goods such as lapis lazuli from Afghanistan and shells from the Persian Gulf show that even in these early times, Eridu had far-reaching connections. Society was probably stratified, with priests and temple officials holding the highest ranks. The central temple wasn't just a religious hub, it likely controlled land, managed surplus grain, and served as a center for the redistribution of resources. In many ways the temple functioned as both church and state. Eridu was not only an economic and religious center, it was also a cultural one. Among the most intriguing artifacts are votive offerings, small objects left by worshippers at the temple. These include cone mosaics, clay figurines, and inscribed bricks. Some bricks bore the seal impressions of rulers, showing the close ties between religion and governance. The use of symbolic art also emerged during this time. The temple structures often incorporated decorated columns and cone mosaics, an early form of artistic expression that would influence later Mesopotamian art. Around 2300 BCE, Eridu began to decline. Other cities such as Uruk and Ur rose to prominence. Environmental changes, including the shifting of river courses and salinization of farmland, may have contributed to its fall. The construction of the ziggurat during the Ur3 period was a brief return to its past glory, but the city never fully recovered its former status. By the first millennium BCE, Eridu was no longer a bustling metropolis but a sacred site visited by pilgrims. Pottery fragments from the Hellenistic period show that people still came here long after the city had ceased to function in a traditional sense. Although Safar and Lloyd's work in the 1940s was groundbreaking, their research wasn't published until 1981. Since then, interest in Eridu has only grown. Despite political instability and regional conflict, new archaeological missions, particularly by Italian and French teams, aim to return to the site with more advanced technologies, ground-penetrating radar, satellite imaging, and digital reconstruction. There's still much to be discovered beneath the surface of Tel Abu Sharain. Further digs may reveal more about the city's layout, its inhabitants, and the connections it had with other ancient civilizations. Each new layer has the potential to reshape our understanding of how human societies transitioned from small tribal communities to organized, complex urban centers. Today, Eridu is a symbol. It is a reminder that cities did not emerge overnight, but through generations of shared purpose, religious devotion, and technological experimentation. Eridu marks the transition from the Neolithic world to the first urban civilization. It is the place where the earliest known humans gathered not just to live but to build something lasting. A society, a culture, a spiritual home. Its legacy lives on in our cities, in the institutions we build, and in the stories we tell about our origins. As the birthplace of kingship, temple worship, and urban planning, Eridu deserves its title, the first city of the world. And as modern archaeologists return to its dusty mounds, they walk in the footsteps of those who built the very foundations of civilization itself.